So today we're going to talk about three differences between extraordinary people and average people. And the first difference that I'm going to talk about is their willingness to repeat a trivial activity, a seemingly trivial activity, even when it seems boring. And the second habit that I'm going to talk about is the way they focus their energy and attention and resources on things that they can do something with instead of things that they cannot. And the third habit that we'll discuss is not necessarily something that all successful people do, but it can be something that you could apply in your life if you want to be successful. And that is the fact that they follow the majority of successful people follow paths that have already been trodden. It's a very small minority of people that come up with something so innovative that and so not only innovative but something that there's a need for, and then that is what becomes successful. But it's very hard to find that combination between innovation and necessity and then market it properly. So it's safer in a way to do something that has already been done and then add some new twists and some new elements to it. So the first thing that we talked about, the first habit that we talked about, was the thing with the repetition of tasks even when they seem boring. And success is often portrayed as an exponential graph, which is like flat for a very long period of time, but then it shoots up very quickly. And this graph is different from a linear graph. A linear graph is the one that keeps going upwards, and if you imagine acceleration, there is no acceleration to it, it's just speed, but it keeps on moving on the same pace, and that's not how success is portrayed. And there's also a verse in the Bible that says, "To those who have will more be given, but to the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away." And that could seem very unfair, but I'll explain in a way that you might understand it better. So, and that is also, by the way, related to the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the things produced come from 20% of the people producing those things, or 80% of the wealth, or not wealth, but 80% of everything comes from 20% of resources, and 20% of the things that you're producing come from 80% of the efforts or the resources or the people. So that is somewhat related to this, but the reason why it's not as unfair as it sounds is because of the exponential graph that I described in the start. For a long period of time, people who eventually become successful keep on doing these trivial tasks, these repetitive tasks, and then suddenly when because they've been there so long, some opportunity comes or something happens that results in them being very successful very rapidly. And it's not because they found overnight success, but it's because of all those little repetitive things that they've done in their life previously and that they've consistently continued with. So even if something seems trivial at the moment, but you know that it's going to affect your career or affect your success later, you should keep on doing it consistently. It should be a part of your daily routine or a regular routine. And the people who give up in the middle, like the people who were going flat and then they got bored, so they stopped, those could be successful as well. They could also gain everything, but since they stop, their share goes to the people who've been doing all the hard work consistently, right? So that's one reason why it isn't that unfair. And I'm not saying that it's bad to enjoy your work. There's few things in the world that are as satisfying as being in love with what you do. But at the same time, if you look at the lives of successful people, you see that enjoyment and fun becomes irrelevant to them, especially when work is concerned, because work is something that even if you make your hobby your work, even that becomes boring at a point. It becomes works, right? So when you think about work, you shouldn't necessarily focus on the fun part, but focus on the consistency. And that's what most successful people do. That's what differentiates them from ordinary people. If you imagine a boat moving forward in a river or sea, you notice that the bow of the boat is very narrow, while the boat itself is broader in the middle. So it has to cut through the water. And if you imagine that the boat is you and the ocean or the sea is life, you have to concentrate on a very small amount of that water. because you have to cut through this, and to move forward you have to cut through this. To cut through it, you have to make contact with a very small piece or amount of water, because if you focus on everything or a bigger amount of water, then the resistance would be so huge that it would push you backwards instead of letting you move forward. So in life, you should do the same thing. If you want to be successful, concentrate on things that you can change. Concentrate on a small amount of things and then try to change those things instead of trying to change everything. And it goes for worries as well, because if you worry about everything, if you worry about a very huge amount of things, then you know that you cannot change those, right? So just ignore the things that you know that you can't change and focus on the very small amount of things that you know that you can. And that's how you will move forward in life. That could also, by the way, relate in a way to the 80-20 principle, that you should make contact with 20% of the worries in your life or the things that you can change in your life, and that would move you forward 80% of the times. So our point number 3 was to walk on paths that have already been paved by other people. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't mean that all successful people do this, but the majority of successful people have to, because it's something that has been tested. It's far more safer, and you're much more likely to believe that something is possible if you've seen someone else do before. It's the people that we're most inspired by, those are the people that do things that have not been done before, but that's a very small minority of the people in the world. So you don't really need to be the first one to do everything. You can just follow other people, and that would minimize the amount of effort that you need to put in, right? And that doesn't mean that you're less great of a person, even though maybe that means that, but it would still make you successful. So walk on paths that have already been trodden. And there's a really nice quote that sums this up. It's not exactly the same thing, but it says that shoot for the moon, and even if you fall, you'll fall among the stars, right? Just aim for the best, and then whatever happens, you'll know that if you've put in your best effort, then even if you don't achieve that big of an aim, you'll still be successful. And similarly, if you do what people already have done, maybe you wouldn't be as successful as they are, but the success that you would achieve wouldn't be nothing either, and it would be far more likely that you do succeed at things that you've seen other people do before.